Good afternoon, everyone. We apologise for the delay. It just took us a little bit longer to actually set up the webinar in Facebook. Yesterday at the Heritage Day at Huskisson, which was hosted by the Huskisson Heritage Association, it was a great day. We were asked to give a 15-minute presentation on how to find exciting records about your past and Huskisson's past. After our presentation, we were asked if we could present it as a webinar. So here we are doing that. We're using Huskisson as the place that can relate to any place that you may be researching, not only the place where you may live today, but also places where your ancestors lived in the past. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders' history, their people and culture, and also in this presentation there is mention of Indigenous Australians. We're going to look at 5 repositories, or 5 websites if you like to call them that. You must also consider the time and effort taken by the librarians and the archivists in digitising the records, and not all the digitised records are indexed. So if there's a list of names, the digitised record may not index in text all the 25 names that may be on the document. We're going to look at the Land Registry, New South Wales Land Registry, State Library of New South Wales, the New South Wales State Archives, the National Archives of Australia, and the National Library of Australia, being Trove. So the first place we're going to look at is the New South Wales Land Registry. Many family historians forget about the land. The New South Wales Land Registry has a diverse range of original parish maps, land deeds, land grants from the early colonial days. You have to take your time going through the New South Wales Land Registry. Sometimes you've got to know the exact deed number. So you take your time going through it. But we're going to look at what is there for Huskisson. There's over 20 parish maps. And we also had a big giggle yesterday in regards to, on this particular map, parish map, which is from the New South Wales Land Registry, there's land allocated for railway purposes. 2021, the railway never made it to Huskisson. But how we all laughed and said we would love to be able to get on a train and go direct to Sydney without the way we have to do it today, travelling to Bomaderry. The train station or the railway line never crossed the Shoalhaven River. There's over 20 maps, but you don't search for Huskisson. You actually search for the county. So it was the county of St. Vincent. So when you are looking at a place, don't just look for the actual town or the place name. You'll have to do a little bit of research first and work out what county the location is in. Huskisson today is still in the county of St. Vincent. Parish maps are the original maps. Different editions will show variations to the roads. Has land been reclaimed? Was there a reserve? Like you can see 1954 on this one. And this is actually the 3rd edition of the parish maps. We can see up the very top that land from 1849 was councilled. So you'll see all that information on a parish map, and then you'll see, and if you trace all the different editions, if land was subdivided, you'll see the subdivision appear on the parish maps. Then we moved on to looking at the State Library of New South Wales. This can be done from your kitchen or your lounge room. Gone are the days when regional and country people had to spend a day just travelling to Sydney to go to the State Library in New South Wales. They have a great collection digitised, and always keep an eye out for new records that have been digitised. Taking note, as I said before, the amount of time taken to digitise the records and then place them online. We all have to be appreciated of that. For Huskisson at the State Library of New South Wales, we actually found Huskisson subdivision plans of 1900 to 1913. This would have occurred, this particular subdivision, after a little bit of research, happened in about 1905. So if the library or the archives have a date, just also double check the date, unless the date itself is printed on the actual document. So this is a digitised copy of what the State Library / the Mitchell Library have on file. So it doesn't say Huskisson anywhere. It's the Jervis Bay Land Company that's selling the land, and Cyril Blackett is the manager, and he's at Nowra, and the railway's already surveyed through the property, which is in 2 miles of the steamer's wharf. It does not. It's beside the village of the Huskisson, but the headline does not say Huskisson. It says Caribbean. So always when you're looking at a place, always double check surrounding place names. And in regards to Huskisson, you can look up Woolamaya, Vincentia. So you have to just broaden your search and look at adjoining townships when you're looking for any records, regardless whether they're land records or even if they're birth, deaths and marriage records. Because you may know the birth actually happened at Ulladulla in New South Wales, but the birth was not registered at Ulladulla. It was actually registered at Milton, or even later on, Nowra. Did your ancestors buy any of this land? Or do you live on this land today? There were additional parish maps located in the State Library of New South Wales. So don't just look at one set of archives. Look across. If you're looking for land, look at the State Library, look at Trove, and also, of course, look at the Register of Lands of New South Wales. So here we can see some of the names: Jervis Bay, Woolabumba, Caribbean, Caribbean Creek, there's Woolamaya. There's a whole range of different place names that you can actually use to double check. And of course, this is a parish map, county of St. Vincent, and you've got the different parishes. So you have to look up county. You can also look up parish, and you can also look up the name of the town. Also at the State Library, and I do apologise for the quality of this image. It is a small image. However, if you look at it on a laptop or a PC, you can actually read it quite well. But it's digitised, so it's not meant to be used in a presentation as a large image. You've got the tools within the State Library's website that you can increase the size that it does not pixelate. See, 1843 Baker's Australian Country or County, Atlas. And it goes through all the different counties, mostly in New South Wales. And it will show you what the town and the owners of the land in 1843 were at that time. So we've got Jervis Bay, we've got Huskisson. It's showing quite a lot of settlement around Jervis Bay itself, and also south to Ulladulla. But it's also got Goulburn in it. It's got all the different counties. This is the one for the county of St. Vincent. There's even one with Browley, and a bigger map of Browley, and it's all broken down into its individual streets. And the streets haven't changed much to this very day. We then moved on to the New South Wales State Archives. At the moment, they're called State Archives and Records. They shortened down to the New South Wales Archives. When you're reading books, you might see reference to Archives Office New South Wales. You might see SA New South Wales. At the moment, the official abbreviation is NSW SA. They have a larger amount of content. And also check back, as you will in Trove too, check back and see, has more been digitised, even for the State Library too. And this is a photo of Huskisson and Nowra Road showing the damaged surface. Now, we didn't drive through that yesterday. So it's showing you what the environment is like. It's showing you the type of fencing that is used. The exact location is not known, and they did not have a time period on that. But you'll see there's actually some writing on some of the fence posts, so you may be able to use that to date the photograph, because there's no buildings per se to help you identify the date of the photo. We then moved on to the blanket returns. And if you're researching Indigenous families, the blanket returns are something that you should always check. If you're researching a place, once again, the blanket returns are records that you should consult. And of course, Huskisson or Jervis Bay was on the last page of every collection I looked at. And what was interesting with this particular document, about 3/4 of the way down, we've actually got Yappy Joe, who's 48 years old. So it's giving the ages of the people. It's giving if they have a wife, and it's also giving their children, whether there's a male or a female child. And it's got Jervis Bay or Jarvis Bay spelled differently, but that's okay. But it's in Browley. So all of a sudden, if you're researching early records of Jervis Bay or Huskisson, you actually have to look in the district of Browley. So we've got Tom Pedango, who was 40, one wife, one female child. He was a Browley. We've got Paddy Carawan, who was 50 years old with one wife, who I suspect would have been Maria Carawan at that time, and Derek Carawan. And for those of you who live on the south coast would know that Carawan was the name of the fire that came through here 18 months ago. So we talked about the blanket returns and how you have to not just concentrate on the one location, but look at how the records were recording that place at that particular time. This is 1842. On the 27th of May, 1842, at Wollongong. What's Wollongong got to do with Huskisson? You will see soon. And the top entry is John Bundle, and his native name or totem name is Tamarong. Other records do show it as Timalong. His probable age is 47 years old. He's got one wife, and at that time, he had no male children and no female children. And his tribal area was Five Islands, and that was in the district of the Illawarra. We've also got Joe Trimble down the bottom. Now, if we go taking that blanket return of John Bundle, we're actually able to create a family tree. And from John Timalong or Tamalong Bundle, we know his birth age of approximately 1795, due to the fact that on the Aboriginal returns, blanket returns, there is an age. Not every entry does have an age, but the majority do have an age. The State Archives are actually running a webinar, I think, at the end of June on how to use the blanket returns. But there's not just blanket returns in at the State Archives. There's also different blanket returns and reports at the Mitchell Library or the State Library of New South Wales. So we do know that Jane Bundle, who died in Huskisson in 1900, was the daughter of John Tummerong Bundle. So because in 1842 there's no age, there's no female child, we could estimate that she was born after 1842. There's no death record for Jane, but there is a reference and primary evidence of her death, and that is because it is mentioned in the newspapers, even though there's no burial record. She was actually with Jimmy or James Dan, who was born in Huskisson around 1848, and he died in 1913, and he's buried at the Church of England church burial ground at Huskisson. Their son, Cecil Dan, was born in Huskisson in 1881, and as an adult, he moved to Walliga Lake. So from one entry in a blanket return, we're able to fill in more details on a family tree. We then looked at the National Archives of Australia. So many people go to the Australian War Memorial website to get war service records, and they never find them. That's because they're not there. All service records for Boer War, World War One, World War Two, etc., are held by the National Archives of Australia. They have digitised all of a mammoth task. They've digitised all of World War One, and they've now just starting on World War Two. But at the National Archives, they just don't have war records. We found this photo, and they've dated it 1970, which is about right for Huskisson of 1917. They had a wide range of photographs of Huskisson. So that is the National Archives. So you're getting photos from the State Archives and also the National Archives of Australia. And here's an example of a war record, but it doesn't say Huskisson anywhere on the war record, but we do know that this Indigenous man was living at Huskisson at the time of his enlistment. Herbert Timbery, he joined on the 28th of September 1819. He was discharged pretty quickly. Why? It became the end of the war in November 1918. But the information you can obtain from any of the war service records, sometimes you're not going to find that information anywhere else because it's a record as that time. So in September 1918, he said that he was born at Port Kembla near Wollongong in New South Wales. Is he a natural born British subject or a naturalised British subject? Yes, because he was born at Port Kembla. It gives his date of birth. There's no birth registration for Herbert Timbery. So it's only his war service record that is going to give you his date of birth. Now, it's not just Indigenous people that you're getting that information from. It's everybody. He gives his age as 18 years and 10 months. His occupation was a fisherman. He was not an apprentice. He was not married. Gives his father's address or his next of kin, being his father in this case, Joseph Timbery, La Perouse, Sydney. But it gives also the postal address that he was using in 1918. And it's Patrick O'Connell, in Nowra. So he was using someone in Nowra for a postal address because technically, well, he didn't have a postal address per se at Huskisson, but he did work out of the Huskisson waters. Some of the war service records, there's 86 pages. There's letters from parents, there's letters from the men themselves, and they're all together. And this is also with World War II. The difference is the World War II records that have been digitised include also a film script photo of the servicemen and women. Still at the National Archives, we found a vast collection of records relating to the history of the post office at Huskisson, which started in 1847. And there are 4 sets of records, and they're about 100 pages each. So it will take a long time to go through them all. But what I did like about this particular one, it is the petition to start the post office. So go and have a look at the National Archives and see what they say about the post office in your hometown, where your ancestors on it. This has a wonderful list of names. Middle column, up the very top, Alexander Berry. Now, why did Alexander Berry, who was located at Coolangatta and Berry, wanted a post office at Huskisson? Very simple. It would make his workload lighter because the mail would then hopefully, touch wood, go direct to Huskisson rather than being held at Coolangatta and then another trip by ship to actually Huskisson. But it does have a list of names. I've seen a petition for the post office at Milton in New South Wales. And some of the people who signed their name, all other records relating to them, they always marked it X marks the spot. So the petition had a few fraudulent names actually put in. I have not researched all these people to say, but you can see we've got Henry Dent, you've got William Dent, so you can resume, and we've got James Dent up the top, and we've got George Dent Senior. So you can see a pattern arising in regards that there is a big family group of the Dents at Huskisson in 1847. So you'll find many of these will also be expired convicts, because there were still convicts working down here working on the south coast in the 1840s, in the early 1840s, even though they had arrived prior to that. Convicts stopped being sent to New South Wales in 1841. The existing convicts at the time still had to serve their time. Thomas Young. So there's a whole list of people there that, if you're researching a place, that you could go and research. We then moved on to the National Library, also known as Trove. And this is a photo of Huskisson, and I actually said to the people yesterday, I said, does anyone recognise where we are? And I had the best answer ever, up the road. And that's exactly where we were. They were able to recognise the location because of a building. So when you are researching a place, go walk the streets, go and look at the buildings, because that will help you identify the location. And in this particular case, it is the Huskisson Hotel. So that's how we're able to identify not only the location, apart from the fact that Trove told me it was Huskisson, but we can also identify by the architecture at the time. Also in Trove are the newspapers. Now, the newspapers, there are over 2,500 entries just for Huskisson. I didn't even get into Wollmeyer or any other surrounding town, because it could be an entry, an article relating to Tomarong that also mentions Huskisson to the surrounding areas. So there's over 2,500 entries of Huskisson or articles in the historic newspapers on Trove. When you are using Trove and you're looking for a place in New South Wales, for example, Huskisson, don't just tick, I only want to look at New South Wales newspapers. Newspapers copied each other continuously, just like they do today. So don't just tick New South Wales if you're looking for a New South Wales place, because there could be an article that was in a New South Wales newspaper that has not been digitised as yet, but has been copied or partially copied into a Queensland newspaper or to a Victorian newspaper or even to a Tasmanian newspaper. So the only record for what you may be looking for is actually in a non-New South Wales newspaper. So try not to restrict yourself with the location of the newspaper. You should, however, once you're drilling it down, restrict it by the time period, because you're not going to go and read 2,500 articles on Huskisson in one sitting. So bring it down to a specific time period. We also talked about tagging articles, and I did this a lot quicker yesterday because I went exactly 15 minutes and I'm already up to 26 at the moment. We spoke about tagging articles. Now, it doesn't cost anything to join Trove. And when you're finding and you find a newspaper, you may wish to go and correct any of the transcription identification errors that do occur. They do a brilliant job, but no, it's a machine recognising the text and its interpretation. So every now and then, no, you're going to find a mistake here and there. But we spoke about tags. So tag, you put in a location or you put in the name of people who are in the article, even a time period. And then when you go to research again, those tags will give that article priority. If you see something, you want to go back to it, you can put a tag in, even if the tag is I've got to come back to this, because you'll never find that article when you go looking for it again. So always place in a tag, and the tag also helps other researchers too and helps build up the online resources on Trove. So, as I said, we spoke about the New South Wales Land Registry, the State Library New South Wales, the New South Wales State Archives, the National Archives of Australia, and the National Library of Australia, Trove. If you've already looked at these sites, great. Go back and have another look, because new digitised records are gradually being added and all the time. And the State Library of New South Wales, they don't have a big launch and get out the champagne and pop the balloons and everything else like that. They just release the digitised records online. So if you've got a favourite record that you want to go and have a look at, just keep an eye on it. It may eventually become, and it's not digitised at the moment, it may eventually be digitised, and a great amount of appreciation from both hobby family historians, public historians like myself, academic historians, etc., for the amount of work that is being done by all of these 5 repositories with their digitisation program, and we do thank you all. So at my table, we had some resources there on Shoalhaven history and heritage, South Coast Indigenous families and heritage, Norfolk Island, of course, historic photos from Milton Ulladulla area, Borley Point, etc. And we had a bit of a book sale, and we actually had a great day out at Huskisson, and it was actually nice to get out of the house and the office and get in the car and go for a drive. So it was a great day, and a big thank you to the Huskisson Heritage Association. Hopefully, and there were some great other speakers too, a diverse range of very interesting topics, environmental topics, which are also heritage topics too. So everyone have a great afternoon, and I will catch you all later. Thank you.